there's a few touch-ups I'm realizing right away that I need to do. So one of the things I need to do, I need to knock back this bottle, because now that I'm staring at this thing, I'm realizing that this bottle is very light. It's very light. And remember, this whole thing is supposed to be bronzed. It's a sculpture. It's heavy metal that's been, sanded and sculpted, and somebody spent time on it. So this much light on this bottle is not making it read like it's made out of the same material as everything. So there's a few light spots I need to knock back. I think maybe a little bit of the skull, maybe this bottle, and maybe a little bit of this diamond or gem or whatever it is here that's in the corner. I might have to do that a little bit too. So I'm going to hit those first before I do anything else. And so I'm going to grab some paint. I think I'm working with some blue, aqua blue that I was kind of working with before. Can't show you the whole palette, just there's not enough room, but it's a pretty good size palette, but you can get the idea of this kind of blue that I'm working with here. But I need to tone down this bottle and give it a little bit more of sense of dimension. So this side of the bottle is going to be pretty dark, but I'm not going to be doing too much washes today. Too many washes, I should say. So I don't have to worry about it drying or drying more evenly. I'm just going to give it a coat and try to knock it back on the bottle here and let that dry a little bit. Diet Pepsi, dude. Oh, the DP, baby. My God, I lived on Diet Pepsi for so long. It's almost kind of sad how much DP I've drank in my life. But I'm on the, if I'm going to drink a soda nowadays, I've decided that I'm not going to drink much soda, but if I am going to drink soda, it's going to be regular sugared soda. Otherwise, I'm just not going to have a soda. Because soda and sodium and all that artificial crap is not so good for you in the long term. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I want to live longer. And I got to start taking better care of myself. So I am definitely trying to go a little lighter on the soda. I still got my vices. I still got some things that I love, but I've tried to cut back on that. Just, I don't drink soda in the house. I'll drink it at the movie theater sometimes if I'm getting a burger, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it anymore for the house. My wife and I used to just put it away. It was our up all night drug, the DP. Cammy, it's like the diet thing is tricky, right? Because you're thinking, well, it's better than having any calories, isn't it? But then in a way, you're like eating and drinking, but you're telling your body that there's no food value in what you're eating. There's no caloric intake, so it's weird how it kind of offsets your body a little bit. Just trying to figure out what's the best way I can do the little things to take care of ourselves. Love root beer though. Love Dr. Pepper. Even a good Coca-Cola. Especially with like your In-N-Out. Man, I'm getting all the free plugs here tonight. Oh my God. He works for Pepsi? Seriously? He works for Pepsi? Oh my goodness. Bringing home all the good stuff. Yeah, how are you supposed to cut that out when he's bringing home all the liquid crack? Well, hey, everybody's vices their vices, and I get it. Diet Pepsi is a game changer. My wife says for her when she's got like migraines and stuff that a cold Diet Pepsi, I don't know if it's the caffeine and all that, but it just completely helps with the migraines and stuff like that. So like practically frozen Diet Pepsi can really do wonders for a migraine. So she says. So pro tip. All right, so I'm just putting in little bits of details here to try to bring out these gems a little bit. you know, again, we talked about this in the previous stream. Nothing here is made out of the thing that it's supposed to be, right? This is a sculpture. It should all be casted in bronze. Even the jewels in the bottle and everything that's supposed to be glass or transparent of some sort, it's all bronze. So none of it will be transparent. So the key here is trying to create the illusion of maybe dimension through light and shadow, but the tonality of everything, since it's all made out of the same material, is going to be the same. So, but you would expect that a bronze sculpted image, even if it's supposed to be something made out of glass, will not be transparent. You would expect that. It's kind of tricky. Normally I'm trying to paint something to look like it actually is, but in this case I'm trying to paint it to look like it's made out of a different material. How weird is that? All right, so I'm just giving a little bit of dimension to these gems to help them maybe pop out on the bottom edge here. The bottle's sitting back a little bit better now, so I'm digging that. That's doing a little bit better. See if there's anything else I need to. Maybe one more pass over the shadow here. So what are you guys working on? Anything good? Ray, have you been back out? Oh, pallets. Nice. Yeah, I mean, pallets. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. How about just a little bit of a wash over my skull? Just to knock it back a little bit. There we go. Can't be too hot. I was also thinking maybe that my the hat might be a little bit too bright. Not sure here. One thing when you paint, you should always have with you, and of course, I don't know what I did with mine. Oh, here we go. Paper towel. Gotta have your paper towel for the occasional lifting you may have to do. So in this case, I'm going to lift a little bit of this bottle right along the middle here. So I'm getting that gouache wet, pressing down real hard, and getting a little bit of dimension out of it. There we go. All right. I'm going to touch up this hat just a smidge. Jackie, the whole gang's here. Holy moly. Jackie, thanks for dropping in. I know you. You're probably up late streaming too right now. Did you just get done? Or are you going on? Hey, thanks, Jackie. You know, it's taken quite a few streams to work on this thing, but I'm making them smaller streams instead of the epic 3-hour streams. I'm trying to do them in smaller bite-sized bits. My time these days is I can't get that much time away. So I have to kind of do the smaller streams. Jackie, how long are yours? Bowling. That is so awesome. Where are you bowling? Any place we know, or maybe you don't want to divulge? You are the Jackie Comfort Cats now, so maintaining anonymity when you're in public is critical. Exactly. Yeah, I'm just kind of knocking a few hot places back that need to be a little dimmer. Because here's the thing. Tonight I'm going to add back into the dark shadows again. I got to make this thing have a little more dimension. The shadows got to get deeper. When I added the warm to the blue, it neutralized everything, which is good. Made it feel like it's more of a, maybe it's got some reddish brown in it, right? Because you got complements mixing, those kinds of things. But I've also lost a little bit of the contrast. So I find that the way I tend to work is I start with drawing and then I build contrast, usually through painting with one value, right? Like shading, painting with a value. Then you get a high contrast. Then you add more of the middle local values, and that neutralizes everything oftentimes using complementary colors. And then you need a little bit more contrast. So it's kind of a play between middle ground and contrast, middle ground, contrast, middle ground, contrast. And remember that the middle ground is where all the painting is. High contrast stuff is very easy, right? Makes things pop. We see things very easily. The mid ground is where painting is really exciting, because that's where you're mixing colors. You're mixing colors a little bit more, and you have a chance to really bring out a level of subtlety in your painting. And it's all about working in things like texture, which generally happens in the middle ground, local values, but using warms and cools. Contrast is a wonderful thing, makes things pop, makes it easy for the eye to see, but real painting is in the mid ground. That's why you look at guys like Rembrandt and all the great painters. It's how they control the middle ground is really where the magic is. All right. I'm noticing there's one other area I've been thinking about here. Since all this is all nicely tight and packed in here, there's one little area of not much right here, which I'm debating on throwing in another leaf, like one more leaf back here. I'm not exactly sure what direction that leaf would go. Sort of over here. I don't know. I gotta be careful because I don't want to disrupt my earring. Part of the reason this was left was to help the earring on the pirate pop, and I don't want to create anything too busy back here. I don't know. Maybe I can kind of lighten a little bit of this. Let's see if I lighten this a little. See if I get some sort of interesting shape. Get it wet a little bit. Scrub. See if I can lift out. Maybe I'll do it with the dark because I don't want to get too light or I'm going to compete with my value here. So maybe I'll have to come back in with the contrast and create a shape. Maybe that's what I'll do. All right, let's head to the contrast. So again, blue, orange, mixing together, right? We're getting this nice middle ground. So now I need to darken some things up again. So what do you add in gouache? And remember, I have to start getting thicker now. I can't do washes of paint. So I have to be thick. So I think over here, I'm going to mix up some black. Now I have, you can't see it, but on my palette over here off, I've got a whole nother one of these over here, farther over. It's all the same palette. It's a folding palette. So I've got lots of colors preloaded into my little trays. They're kind of dry. I try not to waste gouache because gouache is very expensive, actually. Gouache is not always as available as other pigments. So I try to not waste gouache as much as possible. So I'm trying to stay really dry and loosen up some of this darker, I think it's either black or like a Payne's gray. I think it's black actually. But I'm trying to stay really dry so it's not I need to get it wet enough to loosen the paint, but dry enough that I can brush on. So let's see what happens here. I'm coming back in with some black. Woo! We are definitely black. We are in the black. But that's okay. Oh, nice. You roll and conquered? That's awesome. Hey, thanks, Jackie. It is dark, isn't it? Woo! Wow, it almost looks like a flat dark, doesn't it? It looks like so flat. And okay, so this might be a good time to talk about this then. Gouache is dries very flat. And this is a reason that a lot of people don't like gouache, like painters, because the colors are a little bit on the chalky side, can be. What you get in brightness and rich color and really just vibrant color, you lack a little bit in the depth of the darker values. Things can tend to look a little bit flat. For instance, this high contrast I have here is really, really dark compared to everything else. But it shows you how much range, even though in this picture it looked like the blues were pretty dark, I've got a lot of range here to work with still. So I can lighten it. I can add other colors to it to lighten it. But right now I'm kind of going in with almost like what I would consider if I were inking something to be like spot blacks, right? This is like spot blacks. So any place where I know that it's going to be really, really dark, the darkest of the dark, for things to kind of disappear into. So it's kind of like drawing again in a way. If it's too flat, I can definitely come back in and add some blue that I was working with before. Kind of do this, right? I could not make it pure black, but lighten it up a little bit with some blue. But the one thing about gouache is it's a little bit procedural. It's not as flexible as like an oil paint that stays wet that you can just mix around. It dries quick, it dries flat, and you have to think about things in a procedural way. So I'm going to mix a little bit of black with this blue, and I'm going to work in a little bit of these edges darker here. Now, a lot of this I want to kind of disappear the way that it's disappearing here. But I'm going to have a little light coming in for the reflected light. But my intention is to definitely get into the darks and bring out some of this contrast again. Now you'll notice, because I'm working thicker with the paint, maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't notice, I don't know. But it looks very flat. And there's a lot of techniques with gouache, which you can get, gouache painters really get into, which is like the order that you put down your paint and how you get colors to blend. There's all kinds of techniques for blending. The great thing, though, is no matter what you put down and it dries, you can get it wet again. And it's very sensitive to water. So that means that you can really still play with it even though it's dry. And even so, even if it feels a little flat or maybe not quite right the way you envisioned it in a certain area, gouache is workable. I don't always work in gouache, by the way. I mean, I love oil paint, and there are times when acrylic is perfect. Like for an illustration job on a short notice, acrylic can be really a good medium to work in. So I'm getting into some detail, so I'm using the point of my brush here. But truthfully, what I want to do as soon as I can is I want to get into some flat brush work, but I think that's going to come in more in the mid-tones. Like right now I'm using, a round, right? A round brush. But when you're working with opaque mediums, using a flat covers the ground a lot quicker. But I'm into some details right now, so I'm just going to stay with the round. Cam, you like it more than oil paint? Gouache, that is, I'm assuming you're talking about. I think the problem, most of the time, problem people have with learning to paint with gouache is just that they treat it too much like watercolor. And it's not watercolor. For sure, it's not watercolor. It's its own beast. And it takes a little bit of time to learn how to control it and get your technique down. So I'm borrowing into this black, as you can see over here. I'm pulling some black in occasionally when I need it to be darker. But I've got the blue if I want to stay lighter. I've got some pretty dark areas in here. So in a way, it's kind of weird. I'm kind of going back to drawing again, but with this opaque brush medium. Want some black in here. Oh, Photoshop is your favorite paint. But wait, Photoshop isn't paint. It's your favorite rendering, coloring medium. Did you paint? Yeah, Photoshop's amazing and fun. It's so fast and you can make adjustments very easily. I think the only thing it depends on what my purpose is. If I'm doing something for like a job commercially, a client, it's just all about getting them what they need. But if I'm making paintings that I want to have an original work of art to sell or own or something of that nature, then I like working in real paint. It's an original, one of a kind. There is no other copy. And there's something to that. I don't know. I'm old school. When I came up learning art and going to art school and really getting into my craft, there were no digital tools. I mean, it was all natural medium. And I'm grateful for that now because it's really hard to get that practice in when you're always using digital. So you really have to go the extra mile to learn the natural medium, especially I think if you're tempted in the commercial realm. If you're working for jobs and clients, and today, I mean, everything's digitized or they want it digital in the end. So it's going to be a file, right? That it's very fast. But if you're working for gallery or works of art, it's kind of hard to have a lot of collectability in something that you can make another print of. And there's still a part of me that wants to visit things in a gallery, wants to go look at a work of art. Don't you guys? Don't you guys like to look at art like in a museum and see an original? To like see that surface that the artist worked on, and you can kind of see what their thinking was. There's just something about handling of the physical medium that is very interesting. And as an artist, I think I can see what another artist is doing by the way they handle their medium. But yeah, the work for a lot of clients these days, it just ends up being a digital file, and I'm oftentimes not the person that's making the final art. Like if it's a 3D model or something like that, then the stuff I'm making is not the final art. It's the concept of it, the design of it. So I'm more or less passing on an idea to somebody that's going to make the final art into a game or a film or something like that. You got the keystrokes down memorized for Procreate. You can't remember what they are for anything else. I've got to get on Procreate. I want to try it out. I'm such a Photoshop person myself, and I'm using a Cintiq for most of my digital stuff that working on a pad, I just haven't been able to get a high enough quality pad. I wish they'd kind of make Procreate for desktop. Last time I checked, they weren't doing that. Have they? You guys know that? I wish they would. It's exclusively for pads. At least last time I checked, so it's been a little while though. Yeah, I definitely try to keep moving around in mediums though. Like I'll do some design work on the Cintiq using Photoshop, and then I'll switch over and do something on paper for lunch. Take a break and work on paper for a bit. I don't think I'll ever abandon paper, really. I just don't think I can. I just love it. Just that tactile feel is so critical, especially for drawing. Painting, I mean, obviously you can't do oil paint and get the same effect digitally, but oil paint is so, you're building it up in controlled stages, but drawing is so immediate. At least the way I draw, it's like so responsive and immediate that it goes down and it happens. And touch is critical to that. All right, so what are we doing here? So loving the convo, guys, though. Appreciate it. Yeah, like this. Like this is cold press paper, watercolor paper, and man, it has just got this wonderful feel, a tactile feel. Tooth. It's like fresh powder. It's like snowboarding or skiing, you know? So I think I'm going to work some bigger areas now. And I think this might be a good time to switch to a bigger brush because I don't want to paint big areas with a little brush. Big areas, big brush. Rule. Big areas, big brush. Little areas, little brush. Something I was going to work on. Oh, sorry. Lost track of my thinking. I was going to finish my nose here just a little bit and then. So my local here, I think, will be kind of a bronze brownish, like a deep, deep brown, but it's an oxidized brown, as we were talking about before. I wanted to have that blue-green on it. So there's going to be this continual push for, is it brown? Is it blue? Is it brown? Is it blue? All right, I'm switching to a bigger flat brush to cover some of these bigger areas. So let's see what we got over here. Some gouache brushes, and let's see how these things do. Actually, these aren't specifically gouache brushes, but they're water-based brushes. And I'm going to try a flat here. I got some of that black, and then I'm going to add again some of this blue. Get this kind of dark, but not black dark, and brush in some bigger shadowy areas. I'm thinking about where the big shadow bunches are. The big shadows. I can soften these shadows later, by the way. Again, gouache, you can get it wet. But I need to kind of establish contrast. So I'm being generous about adding the dark where I need it to be. These shadows over here on the side of the. Jackie Comfort Cats, by the way, everybody. If you're not aware, check her out. In addition to the Raider 3000, both of these are great streamers. Check them out. Check them out. Cami, are you do you have a channel? You want some shameless promotion? If you do, go for it. If you're all not familiar, present company included, we do have a Discord for this stream and for myself. So if you want to stay in touch and keep the conversation going after the stream, make sure you join the Discord, which the Discord connection invite is down below in the in my profile down below. But the other socials up there. You can see me on Instagram, Art by Trey Gallaher on Facebook. All the social medias. Wish there weren't so many, to be honest. It's such a kind of a bummer to have to chase them all down. Like there's so many, we have to have a link tree, right? To get all your connections. Jackie, anytime. I always help my people out. If you're a friend of the show, I always want to help other people's streams. So I'm bringing some black back in, bringing in the darkness. Like I know that this edge right here is going to be pretty dark. My light source is coming in from the lower right. And this has got to get pretty dark right here. And that's going to make things pop. You know, I am struggling with this flat. It's just so big in these tight little areas to get these little tiny shadows. It's just, I think I may have to switch back down soon. I don't think I have any flats that are much smaller than this, but this is a pretty small painting for as detailed as it is. I would usually work a little bigger. So, shadows. The big stuff. Turning edges, turning edges. That's what we're doing here. Turning those edges to get this form to pop out a little bit. See, where else is the big stuff? Big stuff. Hope you're all having a good week. It's a Thursday night. I don't usually come out on Thursday, but like I was saying earlier, I could not sleep, so I thought I'd come out for a little bit. Streaming makes me sleepy. Makes me excited, but I get sleepy by the time I'm done. You guys get that way? When you stream and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been streaming for 2 hours. And you realize, like, welcome in, XLaris. Nice to see everybody out here tonight. Appreciate you guys dropping by. You know what, man? I just don't think there's much more I can do. This flat is just so chunky. I just can't do it. I can't get these details with this big old brush. I'm gonna have to go back down, I think, before this session is done. But the good news is, even if you force yourself to paint with something big, then you can kind of fine tune it as you go down in gouache. I mean, you can fix every kind of medium if you know what you're doing. But there are some that are a little bit finicky. Even, you know, the mighty watercolor, which a lot of people say you can't, it's tough to fix. You have to be very careful. That's not true. There's tips. There's tricks. Tips and tricks. It's all about misdirection. Like being a painter is like being a magician. It's all about kind of directing the eye where you want it to go. I'm going to put a little more shadow over here. This paper is so nice. Let me tell you, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm in this wonderful place. Maybe you can hear it. This flat is brushing on this beautiful 100% cotton rag aquarelle paper. And it just has this wonderful kind of drag to it. It's cushy, like velvety. right. Okay, here's some more down here. A little bit up top here. I think I'm going to switch down after this. I will definitely be using this brush again, though, as I move towards the middle ground. It's got a nice, getting some nice choppy brush strokes out of a flat brush. Painting with flat brushes is probably my favorite. I used to paint with the rounds and the details a lot more, but nowadays I just love that. Painting with a flat or a bright. Brights are very similar, short. They give these choppy little brush strokes. I really got more picky about my brushes when I started working more extensively in oils. The oils really start to make you think a lot about surface, because in addition to color and light and shadow and values and texture and all the things that go into rendering, in oil you now are also looking at surface and how you put paint down matters. Concepts like fat over lean, right? So in addition to all the rendering things that we know of how to make things look dimensional and saturated and colorful and contrasty, you're now also paying attention to the surface of the canvas, the kind of brushstroke that you're making, the imprint of the bristles through the paint. So it's like a whole nother dimension. It's like suddenly painting went from a 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. Mostly because with the oil, it's an opaque medium that's so much thicker. It can be thicker paint. So you're looking at a lot more volume of paint on the surface, which not only mixes the way that you want it to mix, but then also leaves an impression of the kind of brush you're using and all those things. All right. There's so many more details I'm realizing I can get into for infinite amounts of time here. So I'm trying to think, what do I got? How far are we in? We're coming up in an hour here. Oh yeah? You got a commission coming, Jackie? Sounds exciting. I have a commission I'm supposed to be doing, but I've had to step away from it for a little while. Haven't had the time. Okay. Switching back. So putting down this guy right here, bringing back up my detail brush for the small areas. Put this guy over here. Okay. So here we go. Back in with the fine details. This has been a good start, though. You're seeing the contrast I was talking about. And you can see how suddenly the thing pops a lot more with that contrast. So in a way, it's kind of like drawing again. Every time you go back to contrast, It's like you're going back to the drawing well. But you're drawing with paint. Listen to some jazz tonight. I don't know what you guys are listening to. The late night thing for me. SF days were great. Jackie, you were there at a good time. That was a good time. That was before the dark days that were to follow. It's a really good, really great years there. Jackie, are you doing the Patreon thing? Not doing the Patreon thing right now. I don't think I'm on enough, to be honest. By the way, this is one of the reasons why a good brush that holds a good tip is kind of critical at this stage of the game. Because as I'm getting into these little tiny little areas, it's important that you got a tip that can hold. And any brush that's worth its weight and will hold a tip like that. It's one of the tests you want to do when you buy a brush, is just to see what kind of a tip that it does keep. Cheap brushes, the tips fall apart very quickly. After a couple of uses, they just don't hold a point anymore. I've had this brush for years and it still holds that point. But I'm not afraid to paint with crappy brushes either, but crappy brushes don't get the real detail that you need. Oh, you have coffee? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. Oh, that's cool. You selling some swag and selling some stuff? Finding these little edges. Finding the edges. Got my little leaf in there, by the way, we were talking about earlier. Flipping back up, almost like an upside down heart. Catches the edge of that branch down here. Yeah, absolutely. I think if Cammy, I think if if you're into painterly stuff, if you want that painterly thing, the flat brushes are where it's at. You are brave. Acrylic with flat brushes. Unless you're using something to keep the medium dry, they do make slow dryers for acrylics though, so you can get it to slow down. And now I see that they're mixing acrylic. Well, it's not so new really, I guess, but they're mixing like the acrylic and gouache together, so it stays fluid for a while, like gouache will, but then it ultimately dries hard like an acrylic. So you get a little bit of that in between. All right. Let's see. So I think I'm going to have light coming from down below here. So I think this definitely needs to have some shadow put up here. I think I need to come in with something a little more blue. Kind of knock this back so that I get some light. Oh, the edge. Some light will come from below. A little shadow. And as I'm adding some of the blue, I'm getting a little thinner. Oh yeah, slow dry, hard to mix. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Hey, quick little audio test, by the way. How's my audio sounding tonight? I'm trying out a new mic. Is it sounding okay out there on you guys' end? Oh, thanks. Thank you. Okay, I'm bringing in some of the blue now. I'm thinking that this blue is a lot like the middle ground, right? I'm going from the dark shadows, which have the more black in it, as I'm transitioning more to the middle ground. And I think that eventually, as this blue gets to where the highlight will be, it'll actually maybe even bring in a little bit of brown back into that orange a little bit. But I'm sort of controlling it very softly. In addition to changing the saturation of the color, I'm also getting a little more transparent as I go towards the light. I probably don't have to do that, but I think ultimately, because I know I'm going to be putting in more more color into here, I don't want to have so much blue paint that it mixes with the color I'm going to put there. So I'm backing off a little bit on the thickness. Again, kind of a tricky thing with gouache, I think, a little bit. Going a little heavier out of the shadows. There we go. I like that. And this is the cool thing with gouache. You can see right here where it's really thick, right? And it's starting to dry, and it might get that little edge. See that tiny little edge where the thick paint hits the transparent paint. Even when this thing is dry, if I come back in here and hit this with a wet brush, I can blend it right out. Or I could dry brush it and scumble it and come back in and mix it. And I think that is the coolest thing, that when I started using gouache, it took me a while to figure, was I kept thinking like an acrylic painter. Because actually, when I learned how to paint, that's how I learned how to paint originally in art school. Training as an illustrator, it's like we used acrylic because it dried so fast. But boy, you really had to, and Cami, you can back me up on this, you really had to kind of plan for what you wanted and work very transparently until you were ready to really go down, because once it dries, it dries. But that's the thing about gouache, is it's never really dry. Oh yeah, and did you hear about, TikTok's in the news right now with the whole, like, they're getting ready to ban it, or they're talking about it, which is going to make a lot of content creators, I think, upset. But it's a Chinese company, so they want, I don't know, a company that is more Western friendly politically, which, I don't know, kind of sounds a little fuzzy to me, to be honest. But I mean, to get too political, and I don't know all the facts, but let's hope it doesn't go away. I don't really use TikTok too much, to be honest, right now, except that I catch the fun stuff that trickles into Instagram, into my feed, and then I get a kick out of a lot of the videos. Cam, you use TikTok? Yeah, me too. I've got a bunch of friends that I send that stuff to, and they're like, why do you send me all this stuff? Yeah, you gotta see this one. This one is the greatest. It's this cat that is talking, or a dog that's got a trick, or humans doing horrible things and hurting themselves. That it's never seems to be an endless stream of fun, is watching humans mess up. Why do we find so much joy in that? Why do I find so much joy in that? I guess I shouldn't pull you guys into my boat. I think for me, I just feel like something about, like, that thing we humans do when we think we got a good idea and it's like such a bad idea. You're like, oh man, I guess it's a train wreck, right? Everybody likes to watch a train wreck, except a real train wreck. The other thing to keep in mind here too, for those keeping an eye on the painting process, that These paints will dry as well, and they will get a little bit lighter. They won't look as wet and juicy as they probably do now. They'll probably also start to look a little flat. Gouache has a little bit of that flat look to it. It was a popular thing at one time, not in my generation, but illustrators and graphic art, designers gouache, as they called it. It had a certain dry, crispy, modern look to the way that it went down, and it actually was really desirable. And there were a lot of illustrators and creatives that mastered the gouache techniques. It dried fast. You could treat it like oil. So there's my map back there, by the way. And then I've got my little sword back there. So many little details. I'm going to only go here for a little bit more, and then I think I got to bug out. I still got some sleeping to do. Is there anything that would have to be done tonight? That's what I'm looking for. I'll probably come back out again this weekend and keep working on this thing, but that's the plan anyway. But is there anything that I just have to do so that I can see where it's going? You know, sometimes you got to get a certain amount done so you can see where it's going to go. By the way, one other thing I'm trying to be a little cautious of here is not to outline everything. This is a painting that's trying to look like a sculpture. So if I draw lines around everything, that is not going to help me make this look dimensional. If you've ever had me as a teacher, you know that I have a big lecture about what is drawing. What is a line? And lines are wonderful graphic things, but lines do not help you if you're going for 3 dimensions. Lines can help you with 2 dimensions in style and shapes, but not so much for 3 dimensions. So one thing I'm being careful of with my black here is I'm not thinking about it like I'm redrawing all my lines again. I'm putting in my shadows, the thicker shadows at this point. If I need a little bit of a line, it might be just to help separate something that has light on it a little bit more than something else. But you got to be very careful. All right, how about this snake? He's got to have this little bit of dimension as this tail wraps around the edge of my sign here. The darkest of the darks. Yeah, these lines and these areas of dark have definitely helped pop this thing out now. I will tame them again. I will definitely be trying to not let the shadows be as heavy as they appear now. but that's why I'm thinking about them like an inker, like spot black. One of the first things you do in inking or comic book inking is you start with your spot blacks. You start with the area that gives you the greatest contrast. Greatest contrast is also going to help you see the image sooner. And sometimes being able to see the image sooner tells you what you need to do next. Also, if you, I heard an artist say this recently, I think it was Ian McKay. I was listening to a video of his on YouTube, and he was saying that he likes to start with the high contrast because if he doesn't get to finish the job, if he runs out of time, that you can get away with the image if they can see it real well. The high contrast is sort of like makes the painting look done quicker. And then as you get more time, you can spend more time on the middle ground and the local colors. So contrast, again, sells the image by recognizability and pop. Thought that was pretty clever, actually. I'd never really thought about it that way, but that's true. Like, if you do the contrasty stuff first, then if you run out of time, your client is generally still pretty happy. Because the middle ground takes all the time. Sleep is for the smart. But we used to always say you can sleep when you're dead, right? There'll be plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. The rest of your non-living days to sleep. But boy, let me tell you, like, what they're learning now about the damage of people that don't get proper sleep does to your body and your brain, and things like Alzheimer's and early dementia and body's basic functioning to fight off infection all comes from sleep. The sleep is like our recovery, right? You got to take care of the old body. Be good to your body. Don't make it work so hard. Give it the rest that it needs. And eat better. You can tell the age group I'm in because I am all about trying to take care of myself. I wish I would have started earlier. That's all I can say, guys. For you younger artists and younger cats out there, learn to take care of yourself sooner. You will be glad that you did. Your body will thank you and reward you. All right. Well, I think we're getting the idea started here. And boy, you can really see things are starting to pop out, right? I'm just glancing over here at what you guys are seeing. And it is definitely popping a lot more now. I have the contrast back in here. Got my spider. But I have got lots of shadows to work on. So this is going to be a long one. I wasn't sure how many episodes this would run into, but I can tell that this thing is going to probably take me a little bit of time. Maybe I have to put some cycles into this off stream just so that it's a little faster for the on stream stuff. All right, guys and gals and people. I think I say guys too much. Friends. I think this is, I'm going to call this for this episode. But now we can kind of see where, what our duties are next. You can see that I need to continue to work on these shadows, bring these back out. And I think also, just as I'm kind of brainstorming here, I think I'm going to need to work in some of that middle ground too. I don't think I need to finish all of the shadows perfectly before starting the middle ground. And like most things in rendering and value and painting, everything's relative, right? Everything is relative. So making decisions about value and color are all based upon the things that are around it. So having a little bit of all of it working will help tell me what I need more of. So I think I'm going to keep working these shadows for sure. For sure. Got to keep working the shadows. But I think it wouldn't hurt to work in some middle values and some local color. But I do want this thing to remain very blue-green. It was made of bronze, but it's been exposed to the ocean. The tavern by the sea. So lots of that wet ocean air has started to oxidize this. So there'll still be a little tinge of brown in it, I'm sure, at some point. But I am envisioning that it will be heavy, heavy blues and greens. And pretty tasty. Definitely see it coming out of there. Eye patch, empty socket. Oh, so much more fun to do if there were only so many hours in the day. But I gotta put this one down for now. Thanks for flying with me if you hung with me during this episode. I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope you can make some time for your passions, that you be good to yourself and good to your friends and good to each other as people. We got to take care of this planet and each other, help each other, be patient with one another, right? We're all so much in a dang hurry all the time. Got to get what we want, but remember that we got to take care of each other. We all need a little bit of humanity to help each other along the way. But make time for those passions and try to get some sleep.